Hi, everybody. This is Matt Towers with CPA.com. I'm excited to be kicking off our LinkedIn Live interview series on real firm stories in innovation in the assurance area. And my guest today is Noah Buxton from Armanino. Welcome, Noah. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Great. So, the intent with this series and digging in on innovation is we really want to kind of capture the essence of kind of how you approach innovation, get a real story around innovation or stories if they're kind of multiple to tell. But I think the takeaway that we're hoping for the people tuning in is to help give them an idea of some sort of real tangible takeaways, things that they could potentially be doing, as well as better understanding what innovation even means. I think that the term gets thrown around, and I think different firms and different people have different approaches towards it. So maybe we can kick this off, Noah, with you just introducing yourself a little bit more in your role at Armanino, and then we'll kind of dig into the innovation stuff as we go.
Yeah, happy to do that. That's a pretty high bar you set. So we'll see how if I can meet this hurdle.
Sure.
Yes, I'm Noah Buxton. I'm a director here at Armanino LLP, and I have the great pleasure of leading our blockchain practice here at the firm. So let me tell you a little bit more about me. So I'm actually an attorney by education and background. I came through a business and economics degree, and then into law school and practiced law for a few years before actually getting into public accounting. So not your traditional track into public accounting. Maybe I'll come back to that as a theme, because I think that kind of, there's something there with innovation to talk about. So Armanino LLP, for those who don't know the firm, we are a top 25 public accounting firm. We're the largest, headquartered out of California. We operate across the US through a number of locations. I believe we're at 16 office locations right now. So we service clients nationally. We service clients globally through the Moore Group, under the Moore Group flag. And that's a lot of fun working with partner firms outside of the US and different jurisdictions. I've gotten to do a lot more of that with the blockchain practice. It's been really great. I actually started my journey at Armanino in audit. I actually sat under our audit department and was helping to build this new practice focused on IT assurance and third-party reporting, mainly SOC 1 and SOC 2 reporting, but we actually onboarded some other standards and helped clients through other sort of IT and compliance standards as well. That was a very successful run, and we built a very nice little practice under the audit umbrella that eventually expanded and merged with another group within the firm to be a risk assurance and advisory department. So today, Armanino has a really robust practice in risk assurance and advisory, really across industries too, serving clients across industries from fintech to healthcare and everything in between. And through that work, essentially, so what I do today, again, is lead the blockchain practice. Through that work in risk assurance and advisory and working with financial audit teams on the IT side of those engagements, we got exposed to digital assets, cryptocurrency, and exchange clients very early, around 2014. So we kind of got dragged kicking and screaming into these new clients. And that's really how we got exposure in this space and how we eventually launched a formal blockchain practice. So happy to tell you more about that. But that's a little bit about me, a little bit about the firm, and a little bit about the journey in the firm.
No, I appreciate that. No, and I think you mentioned a couple of things there. Your path through SOC and cybersecurity. I'm fairly confident in some of our additional interviews we have in this series. We're going to be talking about that some more.
That's great.
And yeah, it's an area, I think, of real opportunity for the profession. And then blockchain, I think, for a lot of people still remains a mystery. I think if you ask some people, they'll say, we're still kind of in the first inning of this game. Like there's a long way to go. Mm-hmm. But it's cool to see that you, in your role there, and that Armanino is moving things forward in terms of a more aggressive or proactive approach towards blockchain. So we'll get into that, I think, probably in a little bit more detail shortly. I want to start a little higher level, though, in terms of just the subject of innovation. So your title, blockchain leader, director, there's nothing about innovation in your title, but I get the feeling that there's sort of this implied thing around innovation, maybe in your role. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe it's a shared responsibility. I'd be curious to know, though, what kind of your own approach is towards innovation, and just a high level thoughts around what you try to do in the subject of innovation there.
Yeah, that's I guess that's a little bit intuitive of you there, because yes, in an emerging space, being a professional services provider at the end of the day in an emerging space, you have to be at least highly responsive to the market and to what your clients and your new clients are doing. At the middle of the road, you have to, at least be somewhat iterative with them. And in the best case scenario, you're developing solutions and products that actually are maybe lockstep with them or ahead of the market. And I think that's where innovation comes in. So, yeah, I was thinking, these are great opportunities, to talk and share ideas. And in preparing for this, I was thinking more about innovation. I kind of, in our daily practice, I'm doing things, I'm responding to things, I'm trying to build new things, but I don't always step back and think about innovation generally. So that was a nice way to sort of, just reset myself. I think one really important thing, and actually I'll plagiarize Guy Kawasaki on this one. He says, when it comes to innovation, you need to first seek meaning, not money. And I think that that's a great reminder. The most innovative business models or new products, we live with them every day. We know the names of these companies, whether we're sitting on the couch watching Netflix or ordering something on our phone, having it delivered to our door. All of those companies sought really to change something in a meaningful way. So they sought to democratize something or open access to something, right? To make it freely accessible. And what you get out of that is maybe in the very short term, something that's not very profitable, that's very difficult, but at the end is highly, highly profitable, right? And can scale. And so that's one thing I think of. I think, applying it to our practice, what we do every day, we really do seek meaning. It's sort of baked into what we do as a firm, and our purpose, our values, and our anchors. I could talk a little bit more about that later, because I think that at the firm level, at the organizational level, how do we support innovation? How do we foster innovation? How do we create fertile ground for innovation? You can only do that with the right sort of organizational structure and culture. I think, you have to listen to the market is another thing that I think about. You have to really, really be attentive to what your clients are saying, attentive to where their businesses are moving. And you have to be willing to, instead of grab, the arrow out of the quiver that you already have, you might need to be willing to fashion a new arrow. And that can be costly. It can be difficult. It can be uncertain, but it has to be done. I think to be successful, as a firm and as a practitioner.
I wonder if you ever have, like when you talk about a new arrow in the quiver, I wonder if sometimes that is in the form of being curious about clients, asking questions that you might be uncomfortable with the answer because you don't know what you're going to get for an answer. But sometimes the innovation is, at least in my estimation, comes out of better understanding the problems that exist today. So I think, at least from what I gather, a lot of people think of innovation as being shiny new technology, right? So blockchain, shiny new technology, but it has more to do with understanding, like asking tough questions, being prepared for answers that you maybe you can't do anything today with the information you get from a client. But if you're not asking those questions, then you won't even know where you need to be going. Like, what problems should you be trying to solve? So anyway, that just thought I'd share some of that, because I've seen that kind of I guess theme in terms of some of the conversations I've had with people.
100% right. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right, especially when it comes to audit or assurance. We're afraid of those answers sometimes. Wait, you're changing what process? Wait, that's a new product, a new revenue stream that I don't know about or something. But yes, you have to get a little bit more comfortable in those conversations. I agree. That's 100% right. The other thing that in you saying that makes me think is, I think today, we say this at the firm. We talk about a VUCA world. We talk about the only constant is change, and so you have to get comfortable with that. That has to become part of the way you work, part of the way you understand the market. That it is changing out from under you all the time, and in today's world, at an ever increasing pace, the change can happen because it's enabled by technology, right? Or it's enabled by the successes that have come before it.
Sure.
And so I think also, you said innovation is thrown around a lot. It's kind of becomes this buzzword term. I was thinking about that as well. I think there's, in my mind, I'm not sure this is the right theory, or, if the business school professor might be mad at me if I said this, but in my mind, it's kind of two buckets. You've kind of got incremental innovation or change, and you've got transformational or disruptive type of innovation. And I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, but I think we need to think of them. We need to think of them both in our daily practice and in our building our businesses. So incremental change to me is, it is that listening to the client. It's being responsive. It's it's being willing to change your methodology a little bit, being willing to change the existing product that you have or the existing service, tweak it a little bit. Where transformational or disruptive change is the willingness to completely almost leave behind everything that you've invested in, or completely change your business model. So, I think they're kind of their next level ideas. Disruptive changes. If you think about an organization or a product or a service moving along some line of evolution, it could be evolving for the better or devolving for the worse, or just kind of changing around and oscillating based on the market. Disruptive change, it moves you to the next level, right? It's written letters to, carried on horseback, to a mail system, to email, to text message, right? It's always disruptive. I think, so that's kind of the way I think about it. There's an interesting business case actually that I was called back to from business school about ice producers. And it's like a really interesting way to go back and just think about innovation and change in an industry. So in the early 1800s, it became commonplace in North America ice harvesting became a big business essentially, right? We had the Great Lakes, we had a lot of frozen water during certain seasons, and southern parts of the world and across the globe needed that ice. There was high demand for it. And so this evolved as a very, very profitable business. And I think it was in the mid 1800s, we were harvesting something like 25 million tons of ice and shipping it all over the globe, which if you put yourself back for a second, it seems absurd, right? I mean, right. But that was an industry that relied heavily on incremental innovation. And it was all about, more horses, better sleighs, bigger saws, better insulation, better logistics for shipping it around as fast as you could. But then came centralized and industrial refrigeration, right? You could make ice out of water anytime you wanted, in any season, in any place. And then you could ship it to the customers. That was a totally disruptive and transformational change in that industry. It decimated the ice harvesting industry, in a short number of years. Sure. And of course, now we know we have refrigeration in our homes. But if you put yourself back in that sort of late 1800s to early 1900s, the change from centralized refrigeration to then to in-home refrigeration was a complete disruption, complete transformational innovation as well. And in each of those cases, none of the players that were in the industry that were disrupted at the time, the ice harvesters were disrupted by the centralized ice producers and so on. None of them were the same players, right? They were always disrupted by the new market entrant. And so the lesson here, the takeaway, as you said, try and get a takeaway is there's a paradox in innovation, right? So let's put it to a real world use case. So let's think about, I work on real-time audit. We can talk more about that. That's one of the things that we work on that I do every day. Well, wow, real-time audit, that sounds innovative. It is. It's, we produced the world's first real-time audit report, an examination opinion issued in real time. And that it does that every day right now. The system is running. I think the takeaway here is that there's a paradox for the innovator where there becomes a point where the good idea, the new business model, the new service, the new innovation is going to disrupt yourself, right? It's going to disrupt your existing operation potentially, your status quo, the norms that you work in, the investments that you've made potentially. And so you have to get comfortable with that. Real-time audit, is that going to replace staff auditors and seniors and managers tomorrow? No. But will it, a year from now replace a significant number? Potentially, yes. It reduces the need. Using technology and automation can reduce the need for those staff auditors, right? So that's one example of us disrupting our own business model. But you've got to get comfortable with it because change is the only constant.
Yeah, that makes sense when you start talking about transformational like that. That it's a lot different than just sort of taking a current process and saying, what can we do to improve it? It's, I almost think of the word reimagining. And I like the idea of how could this work based on what's possible, and let's be really open-minded about that. Real-time audit's very interesting because the nature of audit has been very much a compliance-driven service. So when you start looking at what's the value proposition of an audit, what are the outcomes of an audit, much of it is, well, the audit is required because X, Y, or Z. And there's seemingly, at least in conversations with various firms and just what I've seen, it can be more and more difficult to provide value outside of just simply, you need this because you maybe need to secure financing or whatever the situation is, right? So, or maybe it's publicly traded companies, whatever it is. But what I'm gathering from real-time audit, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, maybe I should even say this, but I'm just thinking it could be the fact that what else is in it for the client? What would they really want? Like if they could have their best possible case scenario, they would get the compliance piece plus what? Like what would they want to learn? What would they want to know? Mm-hmm. And not just what, but I think the idea of real time is when is this valuable to them? And, traditionally it's been, well, there's no way to gather all this data. We have to get it after the fact. We have to look at it. We have to analyze it, and then we can offer an opinion. But by the time there's an opinion and then possible action items from it, how much time has passed? So I'm guessing that those are some of the tough questions that are being asked around audit in general that have led towards maybe some of this disruption around real time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to that first point, I think what's the additional value? This isn't true for every business model. Yes, you're going to have those new startup clients who don't care what their books look like. They just want them audited so that they can get their finance right. They're less in, their priorities are not aligned with the financial statement audit, for instance. It's just a necessity, as you said. And then there are other business models which may be, we could talk about specifics in blockchain and some of the clients that we work with. There's examples where trust and transparency over the operations, the financial controls and processing at the entity are critically important to the customer, right? And so in those use cases, again, it's not all use cases where transparency to the financial operations or custody or these sort of things is necessary for the client to see. But there are many cases where this is true. And in those cases, I think the additional value is something that can act in the marketplace for the client. It's not just a compliance mechanism only that gets, it gets issued in a PDF now and it gets sent to the regulator or sent to the parent company or sent to the group of investors or subscribers in a fund or something. And it's never really seen. So yeah, I think to that first point, that's the way I think about that as well.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Noah. So just again, trying to dig in and get some concrete aha moments out of this exploration of innovation. Is there anything in terms of specific milestones, aha moments, learning points, pivot points where you've learned anything that you might be able to share around that, whether it's real-time audit or blockchain use cases, anything like that? I'm just curious.
Sure. Yeah, I think, as I said at the top, there's an organizational and a cultural component here too, which has to be talked about, because the way that we have organized ourselves as a firm and the way we act every day fosters potential innovation. It's not always innovation, but it does allow for it. Creates that fertile ground, like I said. So, but how do you do that? How do you do that? So what we've done at Armanino, our leadership put in place what we call our purpose, our values, and our anchors. So first off, purpose, that goes back to that top point that I said, you have to act with sort of a meaning, right? Not just a profit motivation. And so, our purpose here at Armanino is to be the most innovative and entrepreneurial firm, making a positive impact on the lives of our clients, our people, and our communities. So, gosh, those kind of things often are just a bunch of words, just a bunch of platitudes, and they don't often trickle down or become really part of the way people act every day. At Armanino, it really, for what it's worth, it really has trickled down. It really is part of the way we act. The second piece of that is our core values, and our core values are the way we behave. And so if we organize ourselves around things like, positive energy and being wickedly smart and firm first, those will help drive the right outcomes, both for our clients, for our people, and our communities. When it comes to our strategic anchors, you've heard the word innovation in our purpose. It's also one of our strategic anchors. So to be innovative, entrepreneurial, and to focus on growth. And so now those last two things are really the filters or the tracks for the way that we make decisions as a firm. And that goes into, I think, my story, and the story of my team of how we started this blockchain practice is really a testament to the fact that those purposes, values, and anchors, that framework really works. And so I guess the one takeaway would be, if you're building a business, think about your purpose and think about how you can organize your people around common goals and give them that framework, give them that structure, give them that license and empowerment to be creative, do new things, respond to clients. Don't box them in, and let them follow their passions and their pursuits, right? Enable that, because what comes out of it is inevitable human creativity that will benefit you. And so that's one thing. Now, I guess that kind of dovetails into, how do we start a blockchain practice? How do you launch a real-time audit product? There's really a lot to say there. Maybe just to kind of get it out. Innovation is not always a clean process, especially sort of this disruptive innovation. By its very name, it's disruptive, right? It might be polarizing. It might be uncomfortable to people. It might disrupt the current norms, right? And so I think that's true. It happened in our process, right? You move quickly, you break things, you try and do new things, and you disrupt a little bit. At the end of the day, hopefully what you have is, not a mess of broken things, but something new that you've put together or built. And that's what we ended up with. So
sure.
Embrace that, get comfortable with it again. that has to be part of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a big part of this is, you've really laid the foundation with cultural activity. And I guess this is where innovation isn't some silver bullet. It's not, you can't just say, hey, let's get together and have an innovation meeting. It's more around the idea of, I get, for some reason, this analogy to storm chasing comes to mind. Like you can make the right, you can be prepared by knowing all the conditions that are needed in order to be able to appropriately chase storms, but you don't really know until the time comes exactly where a tornado might touch down or exactly where lightning might strike, right? But you can put yourself in a position where when these things happen, you are ready, or you have fostered the ability to be able to take advantage of them. That's maybe my sort of weird layman's way of drilling or distilling a little bit of what you're talking about around the culture.
No, I think I like that. Yeah, that's true. Sort of putting yourself in the right place. That goes in my mind to that incremental innovation. Definitely keeping up with what your clients are doing. Definitely keeping up with what your peers in the industry are doing. As an interesting juxtaposition, I'm sorry to all my fellow and former attorneys, but it's very interesting to see both the inside of a law firm and the inside of a public accounting firm. They are very different, and accountants generally are already more innovative than attorneys. I can tell you that, and they definitely keep pace with change much better. It's interesting to see sort of the way that firms are using technology right now, even just for basic file storage, communications, is vastly different than what law firms are doing. It's very interesting to see that disparity. They're very far behind.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if there was any, I think a lot of the folks tuned in, there are a lot of smaller firms. They're not top 25 firms. They maybe think they don't have the resources to dedicate to innovation and so forth. But I think it'd be interesting to know if there's maybe any takeaways for any size firm. We talked, maybe the main takeaway has to do with culture, because that's true no matter what size your firm is. But I was just wondering if there was anything you might share around how this approach might work in any size firm from your takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say first, like you said, the cultural or organizing ourselves around a common purpose. I think that that's irrespective of the size of the firm. That is good. If you're a sole practitioner, even, with a couple of support people, all the way to, a very large firm. And of course, the larger you get, those things become more and more important to organize people around that purpose, but always important. I think, the second thing is some of the tools that we've built have ended up being world first. But that isn't because we have a huge team, frankly. We've done a lot of our innovation with less than a handful of people, frankly. So I don't think that innovation is hindered necessarily by the size of your team or the depth of your bench. Of course, resources always come into play when we're talking about technology and additional spend. But I can also tell you that Armanino has managed to, and we have as a practice, managed to build new tools in a way that has not been in putting us in the red, so to speak, right? We look to partner with clients to help them innovate. We're not just building solutions, looking for problems. We are responding to problems and building solutions. And if you do that, you're probably doing it not exactly on the client's dime, but maybe in some way, right? If you can find a problem with the client and help them solve it, that's usually something that the client sees value in it. Then certainly that's something that they're willing to remunerate you for usually. So
sure.
Yeah, again, we've done it with a small number of people and without a huge investment. So, or really in some instances, no investment. So I think that it can be done. It's about, again, listening to the client, being willing to be responsive, getting engaged with the client, and really finding the problems in their business and learning how to solve them.
Yeah, that's good insight, Noah. I really appreciate it. I think hopefully everyone took away something from these various points that we've been discussing here today. I think in terms of just sort of summarizing a bit, it really seems like being problem or customer centric, right? And looking at how you can help solve problems for a particular customer. And then once you find a way to solve a problem in a way that's meaningful for the customer, you just ask yourself, is this duplicable, if you will? Can other clients benefit from this? And then when we solve this problem, what did we learn? Is there a way we can tighten up how we solve it? And to whatever extent that leverages technology or other kinds of resources. Again, sometimes it's as subtle as making one little change in how something happens, and it can have this sort of ripple effect. So anyway, great insights today, Noah. I really appreciate it. I think we're about out of time here, but I want to just say thanks again for joining me. It's been very insightful. I'm excited about kicking off the innovation series around assurance today with you, and hopefully everyone gleaned something and is looking to tune in for some of our future conversations here. Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure to be with you, Matt. Can't wait to see the rest of the series.
Excellent.
Stay well.
All right, take care.